as we spoke about Scrum, it spoke about 3 roles, 4 ceremonies and 3 artifacts. And this video is all about the 3 artifacts of Scrum. Now, the Scrum project starts with a desired list of product functionality or a work which you want to do in a given project. And the artifact which constitutes the desired list of functionality is called product backlog. This is our first artifact of Scrum. Now, product backlog constitutes product backlog items. In general, majority of product backlog items are the features, written in a term which gives a value to the end user or purchaser. If you work on this item, it gives some value to the user. So majority of the product backlog items are feature, but we can also have some other type of product backlog items like some knowledge acquisition. So if product owner thinks that we want to implement a desired or a type of functionality after 2-3 iterations, he may add an item that explore about geospatial data, explore about payment gateway interface. So those kind of exploration or knowledge acquisition related work can also become a part of product backlog item. There could be a non-functional product backlog items. Like a product owner may think of migrating from Oracle version XX to Oracle version YY, or a OS version XX to OS version YY. So this task or this work also becomes a part of product backlog item. Product backlog can also contain defects. Yes. So if you get a defects at a later stage of verification or at the later stage of exploring something in our product, and you find out that this is something needs to be changed or needs to be fixed, this also becomes a part of product backlog item, because that defect also needs some prioritization and product owner has a say in it. So defects are also part of product backlog. Any other work which product owner wants a team should be working on should come as a product backlog item. For example, if the product owner thinks that I need a user documentation or I need a particular process flow of this system so I can share it with my end users. So even the documentation which is adding a value to the end user can also become a part of product backlog. But in general, whenever we discuss, we think of discussing features and then further extensions. But yeah, because the majority of product backlog items are features. Now, a good product backlog should be a DEEP. There is an acronym DEEP which represents the characteristic of a good product backlog. The D says detailed appropriately. Means the items which are coming on the top should be fine-grained. They should be sprint ready. The items which are coming at the lower priority can remain at epic level or a high level. If I am not going to work on a desired functionality in next 2 months, it is not required to create a fine-grained details or a fine-grained small slice of that requirement now, because it would be waste. It is creating work in progress inventory. So it should be detailed appropriately. The items which are at priority, which are expected to get scheduled soon in our development, should be sprint ready. Means they should be able to completed. The team should be able to complete them in a one sprint. So they should be sized at a level which can be done in a one sprint. The item at the bottom can remain at a bigger level. The product backlog is emergent in nature. What does it mean? It means the product backlog never get baselined. Till the time we are working on a product, and that is all about agile, responding to change rather than following a plan. If you have a baseline product backlog, then where is the change flexibility? With time, we keep adding new stories to a product backlog item. We keep splitting the existing stories as they become important if you want to bring them at the top. We also keep removing the not required product backlog items from the product backlog. So we keep redefining our work, and that is where the emergent characteristic of product backlog comes into the picture. It is keep emerging as we start working on a product. The product backlog items should be estimated. Secondly, what does it mean? Every item which is a part of product backlog should have some size number attached which can give us idea of a work or a cost involved in developing that particular product backlog item. Now, this will help a product owner to prioritize it. Even if you say that since the item is not detailed enough, since we are not elaborating it because we are following detail appropriately, now it is very difficult to give a size number to it. Now, the items which are bigger in size, the items which we are not prioritizing in near future may have more error in estimation. There may be a higher variance, but it's good to have an associated number with it, because having a number will help us in comparing two items. If we have two big items, both are coming at the later stage, we should know which one is more bigger than the other. So good product backlog should have an estimated size number attached with all product backlog items. And the fourth P represents prioritized. So product backlog items should be prioritized. The items on the top are the ones which are higher priorities. Now, sometimes we think that, okay, I have 100 product backlog items. Do I need to prioritize all the hundreds? I know only I would be working on 5 product backlog items in this iteration. I am thinking of working on remaining 5 in next iterations and all. So I have some visibility of 15 product backlog items that I don't know when I will be working on. Should I need to prioritize them? No, it is not required. Sometimes these figures gives us an impression that everything has to be ordered. We can visualize it like this, that we have the items which are coming in or thing planned in an upcoming sprints or next 2-3 sprints are fine-grained and prioritized. The top one are the one which are of a higher priority, and items which are not planned in next 2-3 sprints and are at a bigger size may remain at a bottom. We are not spending time in prioritizing these items because it would be a waste. Last responsible movement. Once we are done with it, then we would be knowing which one should be prioritized when. So it's a prioritized list of items. The top 2-3 iterations are prioritized well, rest can remain in a bottom as a collection. Now, what kind of example product backlog item we can think of? If you talk about feature, like I want to have a search functionality so that I can find the desired customer. Knowledge acquisition, explore about geospatial data, because in future we want to integrate it with our customer database. Non-functional, we want to migrate from version X of database to version Y. Defects, a defect number XYZ needs to be fixed. Documentation, I need a process flow diagram for sales process. Could be a part of product backlog item. We can also have a change related things, like we had a picture of a customer at a left side, we want to move it towards right side. that will also come as a product backlog item. So this is the first artifact of our Scrum. Now what we do? These all are functionality or a desired work prioritized by product owner. Now there is a team, they have to work on it. We spoke about in a sprint planning meeting, we pick a number of product backlog items which we think as a team that we can deliver. So once we pick a set of product backlog items, we convert them into engineering steps and create a sprint backlog item. So one product backlog item will produce multiple sprint backlog items, because here the functionality is in the language of product owner and here there are tasks in the language of team. For example, create a GUI interface for search screen, create a table to store search count, make a unit test cases for search, upgrade the regression suite to include the search related functionality, write the migration script from version X to version Y for search, all this. Now which all task we should include here is also driven by a definition of done. Now what is this definition of done? A definition of done can be visualized as a checklist which tells that when can we say a particular product backlog item is completed. You picked a particular product backlog item to be worked on in a given sprint. When can you say that I am done with it? In order to have a clear communication between you and the rest of the stakeholders, we first create the definition of done. We tell that on all product backlog item features, I would be working on development of the code, unit testing of it, upgrading the regression test suite, creating the database migration script, maybe getting acceptance from product owner, etc., etc. So whatever work a team agrees for performing on a given product backlog item is considered as a definition of done, and only when they are done with all this work, then only they say that this particular product backlog item has been completed. So while creating a sprint backlog, we also need to consider our definition of done, because the task which you are creating here is coming from is driven by your definition of done also. While creating a sprint backlog, we also estimate the ideal hours needed for each engineering task. Now you may wonder, when I was talking about product backlog, I said that product backlog item also has an estimated number. And here again I am talking about a sprint backlog should have an estimated hours. So if it is done here, why do I have to do it again? In Scrum, we do a 2-level of estimation. That was a top level estimation which is good enough to give us a release plan, to give us a future direction for our work. But this one is for our rolling wave planning. This one is for our upcoming sprint, which is further detailed at a level where someone can pick and identify how many ideal hours you want to spend on it. Now for a given story in a product backlog item, this estimation may vary. So we will talk about this particular concept at length in our estimation and planning videos. Now, along with ideal hours, we also put a person who is working on it, a responsible or assigned person. Now, this is not necessary to be assigned for the complete sprint backlog, but yes, the sprint backlog items which has to be executed soon in upcoming days may have a person identified here. And during working after sprint planning meeting, whenever somebody self-assigns in a daily Scrum meeting, we update the person who is working on a given particular item. So all the items which are in process will be having a name in an assigned column. So if I look at a sprint backlog, I can identify which all items are in process and who is working on it. Now the product backlog was created, maintained by product owner. The sprint backlog is created, maintained by team. Now, it is not like that we only create the sprint backlog once. While working in a sprint, we create it at the sprint planning meeting, but we keep modifying it or adding the task as and when we get the visibility. So sprint backlog is also an emergent in nature. It is not like we baseline it in the beginning of iteration. The second thing which we should remember is the hours which we estimated here are also not something which are freezed. As we get more visibility about a given task, we can modify the number of hours, the estimated hours left or more needed for a given sprint backlog items. So we can keep changing this particular estimate as we move inside the sprint, as we learn more and more about a given sprint. Now, when we are done with all this set of sprint backlog for a given product backlog item, we get an increment of potentially shippable product. And this is our third artifact. Product backlog item meeting the definition of done, getting integrated is our third artifact, which is the one which will give the direct and final value to the end users. Team is the one who is creating this increment. They are creating as per the requirement given by the product owner. They are creating as per the engineering activity or definition of done and defined in definition of done. So these are the three artifacts of Scrum.